What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only NIO stock, what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and give you guys my price prediction for the future based off the charts are showing and based off the data is suggesting. I'm also going to do a big breakdown of this week that's coming up because we have some very important dates that are coming out that are going to really affect NIO and the markets going forward. And before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner, so don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire NIO community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is any of these 12 free stocks could be a free NIO share, a free Tesla share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 1 week. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Looking at NIO, this thing is up about 17.51% for the day on Friday. Let's go. And this thing does look like it wants to continue pushing up. Now, even though I am very bullish on NIO for the short term, there's only one thing that kind of concerns me about this. There's just one little thing, guys. That's the fact that there are more of these lockdowns in China. Now, in China, guys, please note that these lockdowns have been going on for many months. They're not necessarily new news. So I don't necessarily think it's going to affect NIO that badly. However, it is worth noting that this is not the best of things for many Chinese companies out there, lots of Chinese stocks, and this could slow us down just a little bit. However, given everything that's going on in the markets, the fact that the market makers may be incentivized to push us up once you guys see like the options chain, I'm going to show you guys that in a couple of minutes, and also the fact that NIO has earnings on Thursday, right? It's very likely we're going to continue pushing to the upside after the big formation that NIO has. It looks pretty good in my opinion. Now, before NIO's earnings, though, the next major catalyst that's coming out is going to be the big midterm elections in the United States. If you don't know what that is, the entire House of Representatives and 1/3 of the U.S. Senate is going to be up for re-election. This is going to be very important because the big politicians out there, they do not want the market to crash, in my opinion, right before their election date. I think it's very likely they're going to continue to pump like stocks such as the one in the energy sector and not to mention CBD stocks and things like that. They're probably going to let them push up just temporarily, just so that things are not as bad for them going into the election. Now, that's a sign that the market might hold up, maybe trade a little bit sideways for like tomorrow and the day after. However, going into like CPI, this is what the only thing that kind of concerns me about how the market may perform, because CPI is likely not going to be the best. Now, has the market priced this in? It's possible. And I can't guarantee a direction because of it, but I do know one thing, and that's the fact that on paper, CPI is going to be bad because of the fact that energy makes up a big sector in it, and the fact that gas prices actually went up in the month of October compared to like September. It's not going to be the best. Now, does this mean that the whole market's going to collapse? Not necessarily. I don't see it that way. I do think the Fed could be a little bit more hawkish than anticipated, but I don't think it's going to have a super huge effect on employment in America. I do believe unemployment is going to go up, but I don't think it's going to be as extreme as 2008 or the Great Depression, because the current labor force participation rate is still very low compared to where it was back from like 2014 up until like 2020. So it's very important to note that, guys, people are still going back into the workforce. And even though unemployment may be going up, it's not going to be as extreme as other depressions and things like that, in my honest opinion. Now, let's talk about NIO. What on earth is going on with NIO? Well, if you look at the data, NIO was actually underperforming compared to the market, but recently the price price ratio got a big spike, a nice bounce after this bottom. I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, and NIO did go flying after that. On top of that, if you compare NIO to like the SPY, overall NIO has been underperforming a bit, and that's because of the fact that the SPY is being artificially pumped up because of the energy sector. But if you compare NIO to the QQQ and many tech stocks out there, NIO was underperforming most of the time, but we actually saw this big divergence. The QQQ was coming down, but NIO did not care. It started to push up because of how nice it's looking, because of how bullish it is for earnings, especially because of the strong deliveries report they got for Q3. Now, many analysts are very bullish on NIO, but historically NIO is green only about 49% of the time on Mondays. However, it's kind of like a 50-50 thing, and in this case, I am still more bullish. I do believe this thing has more room to run. On top of that, I want to note that NIO short interest did come up a little bit on Friday, as it did for the entire EV sector. But despite that, a lot of these shorts may have actually gotten squeezed out of their positions and started to cover a bit. So I do anticipate this is going to come down a bit. Now, when it comes to markets, besides the whole news involving China, there is something else I wanted to note. If you look at the options chain on SPY for Friday, all right, Friday is coming up very soon. There's actually a 3.72 put to call ratio. This means that the majority of retail investors, institutions, they are loading the boat on the puts. They think the market's about to crash. And if this many people are over leveraged, the market tends to actually cause pain for those people. It tends to not actually crash the way they want it to. Am I saying this always happens? Not necessarily. But does it tend to happen? At least most of the time. The answer is yes. That's why I'm going to be very careful. I don't want to necessarily say the market's going to crash this soon. They may actually try to trick a lot of people and kind of like destroy them on those options. That's how the market makers make money. When it comes to NIO, what are we essentially seeing? Well, the put to call ratio has been historically low for quite a while. A lot of people have been loading up on calls, especially during times like this. I don't believe it's majority like retail. I think a lot of institutions are also bullish on NIO, and they do have an incentive to pump this thing up a bit more. So what's going on with NIO right now? The answer is, if you look at SPY, all right, SPY is basically trading sideways, and I think we're going to continue to do this over the next couple of days because of midterms. But then after midterms, by the time we approach CPI, things could actually change depending on how we react to the data. When it comes to the VIX, though, here's something that's interesting. On the daily, the VIX is coming down. It looks like this thing has a little bit more downside, which is good for the markets. And we may actually approach this key zone around at like 22.5. Also, like I think 23.5 is kind of key, but we're actually still above that. So we do have time and a lot of momentum to continue coming down on VIX, which could be bullish for the markets, at least for the super short term. I'm not saying I'm bullish forever. It's just for like the tomorrow and the day after. When it comes to NIO, what's essentially going on? Okay, if you look at the overall macro trend, let's zoom out for a second. NIO is respecting this descending channel. And you'll notice NIO got these nice bounces off this channel. Well, what happened was NIO retested the channel, got a huge bounce. And when we touch the channel, we have a tendency of actually seeing some very bullish moves to the upside. All right. So what I'm anticipating is a nice continuation for NIO. I want to see this thing continue. Now, you could argue that the news in China is not good and it won't be the best for NIO. You could say that, sure. However, I don't necessarily think it's going to be that bad, and I think NIO is actually approaching this gap fill area around that 12.3 zone. So I do believe NIO is going to go for the gap fill. I want to see NIO break past the $12 mark. For tomorrow, all right, if we're bearish, just hypothetically, I'm not saying we will be, you have to watch support at about 12.25 and then not 12, 11.25, then $11. Then at 10.71 is the next key support zone. Break below that, then we have this gap down here. Do I think NIO is going to break down? No, I don't think that's going to happen, guys. All right, I just wanted to prepare you guys just in case. So please go back on the video and rewatch that just in case. I think what's most likely going to happen, though, is NIO is going to continue to push to the upside and go for the gap fill. The gap fill area, let me just find it one more time on the 2 hour. The gap fill zone is around, where is it? It's around 12.3, I believe. Let me see. 12.25 is where the gap is, around 12.2. I do believe NIO is going to go for the gap and actually fill it. And if we break past that, then 12.63 is going to be the next very, very key resistance level. Now, when you look at NIO's setup right here, NIO had a lot of consolidation in this 11.7 to about this $13.2 range. Lots of volatility back and forth. I do believe NIO is going to head for that zone very soon. I do believe NIO is going to hit the 12s, and we're going to kind of trade sideways, maybe a little bit around this zone, and maybe continue to pump up going into earnings. I do believe that's what's going to happen to NIO. So I am still projecting more bullish price action. I believe NIO is going to push to about, let me see where we are. We're going to break past 11.7 in my opinion. All right, that's my target for NIO to break past this zone right here. Then we're going to push to $12 pretty fast. We might trade a little sideways for like a minute or two, maybe a few minutes, but then we're going to break past, in my opinion, and start to fly, fill the gap around that like 12.2 level. Once we fill the gap, come down a little bit, but we might just continue to pump as the day goes on because NIO was very oversold and a lot of these shorts may continue to cover, pushing us all the way up to about 12.6. Very possible to see NIO make another move like this. And if this thing is super bullish, I mean, 13 is still very possible. I'm not going to be that bullish for this video because I think it's important to secure profits on options if you guys can. But I do believe we could see NIO hit that 12.63 zone pretty quickly, maybe come down a little bit, but hold the mid $12 range and stay pretty strong throughout the majority of the day. So I'm still more bullish than bearish, and I do believe NIO has more room to continue pumping to the upside. That's essentially what I have for this video. If NIO breaks 12.63, the $13 range followed by 13.2 is going to be very key for NIO. I could see NIO hit those zones in the near term future as well. So I'm still more bullish than bearish, guys. If you look at the overall setup on the 2-hour time frame, you will notice that this whole thing looks like an accumulation schematic right here. It looks like Wyckoff right here. We have this big drop. We come down, we have the last point of support, LPS. We are forming a very nice sign of strength right here, a nice LPS zone, followed by phase E, which is where we get the big push all the way back to about this like $13 level, which I do believe NIO is going to hit over the next couple of days. So I'm still more bullish than bearish on NIO. I'm anticipating a nice push to the upside. I did mention some possibility for downside, even though I think it's like super unlikely. I'm only mentioning this because of what's happening in China right now. It's not the best of things. But overall, guys, I'm still more bullish than bearish. And I'm hoping for NIO to push well above the $12 zone. Anyways, thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I will see you guys in the next video. NIO to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright. And peace out.